All right, let's take you to the story now. So the building collapse site in George is officially in the hands of the South African Police Service and the Labour Department. Rescue teams have spent 260 hours searching for survivors and retrieving bodies after a multi-storey building caved in on Monday, the 6th of May. To discuss, I'm now joined by Colin Deiner, the Western Cape Head of Disaster Management. Colin, a good morning to you. Rather afternoon, isn't it? It's afternoon already. We really appreciate your time. Let's just get an update on where we are. Last we checked, well, last I checked anyway, was 19 people still unaccounted for. Is that the situation? What's the update on those numbers as it stands right now, Colin?
Good afternoon, Naledi, and to your viewers. Yeah, so the numbers that we worked on were numbers that were sort of derived from interviews with, survivors, contractors, etc. But there was no accountability system that people were signing in and out. So that, it was very difficult because initially when we got there on the day of the disaster, we heard that it was just over, just under 70, and then it became 75, and then it became 81. But there was never a fixed number that we could actually bank on. We worked on 81, but when we finished at 5:15 yesterday morning, when we, went through the last bit of rubble, we worked out that there were only really 62 people there. We can say with absolute certainty that there's nobody left. That rubble we've literally turned over every brick. So we're working on the 62, and I think that it was really just very, very difficult in terms of numbers, trying to get an exact number.
Yeah, well, you talked to me about just how difficult that process was. I mean, at some point, obviously, when you start search and rescue, you're having conversations with the contractor to say, well, how many people were on this site? I mean, you're right, we had 70, then we had 75, then we were told it was 81. I mean, surely it is concerning that that there was this flip-flopping around the numbers.
Yeah, it was very concerning. We as the rescuers didn't really directly speak to the contractors, or we were given those numbers. When the police or the disaster management of the Garden Route District Municipality was going to speak, they asked us, what do you want to know? What information can you get? And we asked them to get things like, for example, what were people wearing? Where were they in the building when it happened? Those were the kind of questions that we wanted them to ask for us, and they did their best. But if there's no accountability system in place, and people are not being sort of checked in and checked out when they leave a site, it makes it extremely difficult. Just to give you an example, we were doing that. Everybody that came on site to work needed to sign in, needed to sign out, and that's the only way you can really have control over knowing who's where and how many numbers are on site.
Yeah, I mean, that's really worrying, and of course something that I imagine the SAPS and even the Department of Labour will be looking into. Where are we now, Colin, in identifying those that were trapped in the rubble, certainly the bodies?
Yeah, I know that there's still I think it's about, when I last heard, I think it's approximately 5 people that still needed to be identified. It's a really difficult process. I wasn't directly involved, but obviously, I was in on seeing how that process is going. And I must say it's a traumatic exercise, not only for, obviously, mostly the victims waiting for news, but also for the people having to do it. Having to get quite a lot of psychosocial support. So I know that at this stage, there are still a number of, I think, as I said, around 5 people that still need to be identified. And that process is obviously ongoing.
Yeah, we understand as well, this is coming out certainly in the middle of the week, is that now DNA processes needing to take place to identify those bodies. And perhaps let's talk a little bit about just how difficult of a process this really was to get them out, considering that where you're seeing people that have been trapped under rubble for days, where you are finding them dead, that they may have been dead for quite a while, Colin.
Yes, so from what we experienced as the rescuers, everybody that survived, that were alive, we were able to remove. So none of the victims that were removed died from being trapped, for too long, if I can put it that way. They all suffered traumatic injuries, the bodies that we removed. The people that we pulled out alive, unfortunately, some of them have passed away. But so we were not in a situation that somebody passed away because it took too long to get to them. It was very, very difficult. I mean, when you have to break through so much reinforced concrete, I think in the end it was something like 6,600 tons of concrete that was eventually ended up on the spoil piles that were driven away. It's really, so difficult. It takes a lot of people, and it's sort of like a lot of delicate work balanced with demolition work, using earth-moving equipment. So a lot of concentration all the time.
Yeah.
We have what we call lookouts who keep their eyes on the equipment working all the time. So yeah, it really was a challenge for us all.
Yeah, can we just perhaps go back to the numbers and just clarify, because of this, this need now to update. So we understand now that officially we say 62 people were in the building when it collapsed. Just updates on death toll and those that have survived, considering that you said some of them have passed away even after being rescued from the rubble.
So we have it at this stage that 29 people are still alive that we removed. I think it was 32 that were in total, but then we obviously had the 4 that have passed away already since being removed. So that's the numbers that we've got at the moment. There's obviously people in hospital. We are really praying for them to recover fully, but those are processes that I think will still continue for quite a while.
Yeah. Perhaps a message to those that have been assisting. I mean, one of the things that we saw over the past 2 weeks certainly was community members in George coming out in prayer, and how important that was. Highlights really that stood out. I mean, I think about moments that, could very well have given us goosebumps when you were able to find someone and bring them out alive. Moments that really stand out for you about what the past 2 weeks have represented.
Yes, I think there's so many. Obviously, the tragic part is having lost, people. That's one thing that will probably be the thing that that we will always have to remember. But then also, I think recovering so many people in so many difficult situations, just the sheer effort, after 18 hours, bringing 4 people out that were trapped in the basement, and they were all in fairly good shape. The absolute highlight from the rescue perspective was bringing out Gabriel after, I think, 118 hours. That was just, something incredible. And I think probably more than all of that was just the way everybody stood together. The community of George were amazing. You work through the night, you need coffee at some point. You just walk across and there's somebody with a smile giving you a cup of coffee or something to eat. And I know that they were making meals like, almost around a couple of 100 meals a day. At one point we had 600 people on site, and everybody got enough to eat and everybody was looked after. So that I think, with the tragedy, I think it really just showed the kind of commitment of South Africans and the way we can stand together.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, a lot of your focus would be on the work that was done on the site, but one wonders just how much of a challenge it may have been for disaster management and the search and rescue teams, certainly understanding that some of the workers there were undocumented foreign nationals.
Yes, I think, when you go into a rescue operation, you don't ask who the person is or where the person is from. You try and save the person's life. So yes, in terms of the trying to establish, families and trying to establish identities, that did make it very difficult once we removed the people. But from the rescue perspective, it really just was, there's a life, let's, do whatever we can to save it. And I think, understanding that we need information, and the information comes from the police and it comes from Labour and from the district disaster management, and it was very difficult for them to try and get us that information. So it is something that we definitely going to have to look at going forward, is how do we address that.